Fort Knox. Behind granite walls 2 feet thick, guarded by tanks, motion sensors, and soldiers who rarely speak about their job, sits one of the most protected buildings on Earth. The United States Bullion Depository was built in 1936 near Fort Knox, Kentucky, to hold a growing share of America's gold reserves after the country moved away from allowing private citizens to own large amounts of bullion. Today it stores roughly 147 million ounces of gold, though the exact figure has been debated for decades because full independent audits are almost never allowed. Only a handful of people, including the president, are believed to have the complete combination needed to open the vault, and even that is uncertain since no sitting president has publicly confirmed visiting the vault floor. In 1974, journalists and members of Congress were finally let inside for a rare inspection, partly to quiet rumors that the gold had secretly vanished. It hadn't. The depository has never been robbed, and its layered security, both visible and classified, has made it a symbol of American financial stability since the Great Depression reshaped how the nation thought about wealth and trust. Area 51. For decades, the United States government would not even admit this place existed. Tucked into the dry, cracked lakebeds of Nevada's Nellis Air Force Range, roughly 83 miles north of Las Vegas, the site was established in 1955 as a testing ground for the U-2 spy plane. Mountains ring the valley on almost every side, and the isolation was the entire point. Pilots flying secret aircraft needed somewhere no civilian eyes could reach. It wasn't until 2013 that the CIA officially confirmed the base's name and purpose through declassified documents, ending years of official silence. That silence, though, is exactly what let its reputation grow. Sightings of strange lights and unexplained aircraft in the surrounding sky fed decades of speculation about extraterrestrial visitors, claims the government has never confirmed and most researchers consider unsupported by evidence. What is documented is far less dramatic but still remarkable. Some of the most advanced aircraft in American history, including stealth technology that changed modern warfare, were tested in that empty desert, far from any baseline on a public map. Cheyenne Mountain Complex. Deep inside a granite mountain near Colorado Springs, there is a city built to survive the end of the world. Construction began in 1961, during the height of Cold War fears that a nuclear strike could wipe out America's ability to respond. Workers blasted more than 4 acres of tunnels into solid rock, then built an entire operations center on massive steel springs designed to absorb the shock of a nearby explosion. This became the home of NORAD, the joint American and Canadian command responsible for watching North American skies for incoming threats. Blast doors here weigh 25 tons each, yet they can swing shut in seconds. For years, the complex tracked every aircraft and missile over the continent from a windowless command center lit only by screens and quiet radio chatter. Though many operations shifted to a nearby above-ground base in the 2000s, Cheyenne Mountain was never abandoned. It remains active today, a reminder of how close the Cold War came to shaping not just policy, but the literal architecture of American defense. Mount Weather Emergency Operations Center. Somewhere in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia, past a checkpoint few drivers ever notice, lies a facility most Americans have never heard of. Mount Weather has operated since the 1950s under FEMA, built during a period when the government quietly prepared for the possibility that Washington, D.C. itself could be destroyed. Locals for years believed it was simply a weather station, which was, in part, the intended cover. Underground, the complex is rumored to include enough infrastructure to house key government officials for extended periods, though because it remains classified, exact details are difficult to confirm and much of what is known comes from leaked documents rather than official statements. What is verified is its role during the September 11th attacks, when senior officials were reportedly relocated there as part of continuity of government procedures. The mountain above shows almost nothing unusual, just trees, a fence line, and warning signs. Beneath it, however, sits one of the clearest physical reminders that American leadership has long planned for catastrophe, even while hoping never to need it. Raven Rock Mountain Complex. Some call it the underground Pentagon, and the nickname isn't far off. Built into a mountain along the Pennsylvania and Maryland border starting in 1951, Raven Rock was designed as a backup military command center in case Washington could no longer function during an attack. Construction crews carved out chambers so large that entire buildings sit inside the mountain, complete with their own power, water systems and communication networks. During the Cold War, this site was considered essential to keeping the chain of military command alive if the capital fell. It gained public attention again after 2001, when reports suggested Vice President Dick Cheney had been moved there during periods of heightened alert. The Department of Defense has never released full details of daily operations inside, and much of what the public knows comes from investigative journalism rather than official disclosure. Above ground, the site looks like an ordinary military installation with fencing and forest. Below, It stands as one of the few places built specifically to keep the United States government running no matter what happens on the surface. White Sands Missile Range. Stretching across nearly 3,200 square miles of New Mexico desert, this is the largest military installation in the United States, and much of it has never been open to the public. The land was chosen in the 1940s for its emptiness, ringed by mountains that could contain explosions and debris from missile testing. It was here, on July 16, 1945, that the United States detonated the world's first nuclear weapon during the Trinity test, forever changing the nature of modern warfare. The blast fused the desert sand into a greenish glass now called trinitite, some of which is still faintly radioactive today. For decades afterward, White Sands became the country's primary site for testing rockets and missile systems, including early versions of technology that eventually carried astronauts into space. Only twice a year is the Trinity site open to visitors, and even then, access is tightly limited. The rest of the range remains restricted, a quiet desert landscape holding the physical starting point of the nuclear age. National Security Agency Headquarters. At Fort Meade, Maryland, sits a windowless black glass building that has earned the nickname the Puzzle Palace. Established in 1952, the National Security Agency was created to intercept and decode communications considered vital to national security, and for years its very existence was not officially acknowledged. The joke among longtime employees was that NSA stood for no such agency. Inside, the campus is believed to contain some of the most advanced computing power on the planet, though specific capabilities remain classified and are known largely through occasional leaks and congressional testimony. The agency's role expanded dramatically after the September 11 attacks, as surveillance and cybersecurity became central to American defense strategy. In 2013, leaked documents revealed the scale of certain NSA data collection programs, sparking a national debate over privacy that continues today. Armed guards, layered fencing, and electronic countermeasures surround the property, keeping most of what happens inside permanently out of public view, even as its decisions ripple through everyday American life. Yucca Mountain. In the desert hills of Nevada, roughly 90 miles northwest of Las Vegas, the United States built a mountain meant to hold radioactive waste for the next 10,000 years. Studies for the site began in the early 1980s, as the country searched for a permanent home for spent nuclear fuel piling up at reactors across the nation. Engineers tunneled 5 miles into volcanic rock, testing whether the mountain's geology could safely contain radiation far longer than any human civilization has existed. Yet Yucca Mountain has never actually opened. Political opposition, particularly from Nevada officials and residents worried about safety and transportation risks, halted funding in 2011, leaving billions of dollars of construction sealed inside an unused tunnel. The debate over whether to finish the project continues in Congress today, unresolved after more than 4 decades. What remains is an unfinished monument to one of the hardest engineering questions of the modern era: how do you build something safe enough to warn people who won't be born for thousands of years? Federal Reserve Bank of New York Gold Vault. 80 feet below the streets of Manhattan, resting directly on the bedrock of the island, sits one of the largest known gold reserves in the world. Built in 1924, the vault holds gold belonging not just to the United States but to dozens of foreign governments and international organizations that trust America to keep it secure. The vault door alone weighs about 90 tons, yet it is balanced so precisely that a single guard can swing it shut. Inside, gold bars are stored in individual compartments, sorted by owning nation, and nothing is combined or shared between accounts. When ownership changes hands, workers sometimes simply move bars from one compartment to another, all within the same room, since physically shipping gold overseas is far riskier. Tours are extremely limited and require advanced government clearance. Few New Yorkers walking above realize that beneath their feet, resting on Manhattan schist that has held firm for millions of years, lies a room quietly central to global financial trust. Lunar Sample Laboratory Facility. At NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston, a small, closely guarded building holds something no other place on Earth naturally contains. Inside are 842 pounds of rock and soil collected by Apollo astronauts between 1969 and 1972, kept in a nitrogen-filled vault to prevent contamination or decay. The room is considered so sensitive that it was even engineered to survive a hurricane, since losing the samples would mean losing material that can never be replaced. Scientists studying the moon's history must apply for access, and once approved, they work behind airlocks wearing specialized suits to keep human contact to an absolute minimum. Roughly 1/3 of the original lunar material has been used in ongoing research, while much of the rest remains deliberately untouched, preserved for scientific tools that don't exist yet. Every fragment inside traces back to a handful of missions that placed 12 American astronauts on the lunar surface, making this small, quiet lab one of the only places on Earth holding physical pieces of another world. Bohemian Grove. North of San Francisco, along the Russian River in California, redwood trees older than the country itself shelter a private retreat that has puzzled outsiders for more than a century. Founded in 1872 by a group of journalists and artists, the Bohemian Club eventually grew into a gathering place for some of America's most influential business leaders, politicians and public figures, who meet there for a few weeks each summer. Unlike the fortified government sites elsewhere on this list, Bohemian Grove is private property, not a national security installation, but its extreme secrecy and high-profile membership have made it one of the most talked-about restricted places in the country. Members are bound by strict rules against discussing what happens inside, which has fueled decades of speculation ranging from harmless tradition to darker rumor, none of it independently confirmed. What is documented is far simpler. For generations, some of the most powerful people in America have chosen to spend part of their summer beneath ancient redwoods, away from cameras, away from headlines, and almost entirely away from public record.